Dear heads on the wall, dear heads on the wall, always watching you. Hey! Dear heads on the wall, dear heads on the wall, always watching you. Dear hunter shot Bambi, Bambi took the fall, dear heads on the wall, always watching you. Yeah. You're not paranoid if they're out to get you. You're not paranoid if they're out to get you.
Saturday. It is February 30th. We are in the same area that we were in last week. I did scout another area and I was originally going to go there. It's more humanly traveled, which means you're going to have more human presence, kind of defeating the purpose of tracking, so I came back here. I'm going to get the weather whining out of the way first. On Monday of last week, we got a storm in New England that dumped another goddamn 20 inches of snow on us. So it's, if I walk off the main logging road where it seems to be packed down a little bit more, and I'm only sinking halfway to my knee, one step off the trail basically means you're up to your mid-thigh, which means getting around in this is, you can do it, but it's hard work. So we are going to operate on that sense of our limitations. I'll try to see if there's anything else to think of to discuss in relation to the bigfooting subject, and we're going to look for tracks. Cold, wet snow usually means that they'll stay longer. We haven't had snow since, but anything last week, given how much snow they probably got up here, is probably indicative that anything that was there last week is gone. So anything new would be at least, it'll be like 4 or 5 days old. But that's about it. So let's get moving. Let's not, I mean, the conditions are what they are. This time of year is challenging because not only is the snow fairly deep, but it's also wet and heavy. So snowshoeing isn't really an option. It actually creates more work than not, and getting around is post-holing and hiking vernacular through this is, you're going to get a workout in your quads, your calves, and your hamstrings, but whatever the leg muscles, I can't think of along the sides, you're going to get a workout for that, but it's just, you're not going to go in 3 miles and not burn a lot of calories. So anyway, let's get moving. I've talked enough, and we'll see what we find. Tracking, obviously somebody else has been out here too, but what I'm noticing, I'm going to demonstrate. This person this is effectively a trail or a small road, like a dirt road that goes way the hell in there. And if you notice, the person has managed to find the spots where they're not going in more than like ankle deep. But if you walk over here, case in point, once you're off the trail, you are, just to see if it's repeatable, it is. So trudging through that is, it can be done, but I think today is going to be a day of working smarter, not harder. So I'm going to see if I can maintain that, because what I'm going to try to test the theory of, there's some paralleling deer tracks So my theory, I wonder, is did the animals use the trail more than the deeper snow? Because mainly it's a labor-saving thing for them as much as we would use it. So I'm going to test that as a theory and head in past the gate over there and see how far in I can get before it gets crazy deep, because walking through that stuff, just getting to the pond over there is going to be a workout, and I'm going to work smarter than harder today, at least in the initial portion of this. We'll see how we do. That's going to be the first segment break. We're going to get in, cover some ground, see what tracks I do find, and we'll go from there. We'll be back in a bit. Today we're going to do a tracking report, and again we have another deer crossing. Again, given the consistency of the snow, it's kind of hard to tell how long ago that Bambi came through here, but knowing what the weather's been for the last 4 or 5 days, that's your maximum time span. And I am finding that the trail conditions, such as they are, if you stay on the trail, it's a little better, but you walk off, you are up knee deep and such, and it just gets to be kind of exhausting to move through here. So we're going to stick to a more trail-centric focus today, partly for a train change of pace, but two, I didn't really have a lot of fun last week moving through this shit when it was up to my knees and more. So I will say that if I brought my snowshoes today, I didn't because I knew the conditions were last week. Staying on the trail would be doable. Going off trail, you're going to still sink in, given your being a person who is on my best day north of 200 pounds. You're not going to be on the tippy toes of the snow. You're going to sink in because you're heavy enough. That's just going to be how that is. It's called gravity and such. So that being the case, I don't really feel like fighting calories to go. I mean, just to go to that tree that's over there, if you can see that far in, you're going to probably burn over 200 calories just doing that, which isn't a lot in theory, but you're not going that far either. So, kind of keep that within perspective. We're going to keep going, and if nothing else today, we'll see what made tracks and see if my labor saving by animals theory holds up, and we'll take things from there, and I'll see if there's anything else pertaining to the system. Last week I gave you my my reading list, and I am still making my way through Cull's book, which is 402 pages. He covers a lot of territory, and he's a pretty good author in that he cites references for everything that he does claim, which is what a science-minded author should do in cases like this. And he covered enough. I'm going to do a review of the book, but it's one of those things where you need to probably read the book twice through in order to make sure you don't miss anything, in fairness to the author of the book and an audience that might appreciate the fact that I have been in this subject. I've been doing this since 2003, and I have some time in the game, and therefore I have perspective as well. I did speak to him during the week too, and I'm not going to, it's a private conversation, so we'll leave that where it was. Nothing bad though. Nothing political, more just talking shop. Always good to catch up with friends. Come to find out, the last hope of Nezra ever getting together has moved to the southern state, killing that. So Nezra is officially dead. Not that they weren't. They've been dead. I mean, functionally, they've been dead since at least 2016, 2017, in my opinion. But that being that, that's why I don't do groups anymore, because eventually you have fallings out and political things take over the nature of what the group is there for. That's something we could potentially discuss, but I've covered that before. As I've mentioned before, this is not whining. This is just, I've been a member of Nezra. I've been a member of the ABS, the first one. Allegedly the second one, although there was never any formal effort on my part to join it. The AIBR as well as the SRI. I've never been a member of the BFRO. Mainly because having this much time in the game, I just don't see any reason why I should have to pay $300 or whatever their current going rate to attend a camping trip is, when I can go out and go to the same area on my own and do what I'm going to do without effectively needing their leadership's approval to do so. They're not in charge. No one's in charge. Like, no one's an expert, and there are really no experts until somebody ponies up a body. And given the nature of generative AI these days, you're going to probably need one to solve this, which is the unfortunate reality. Not necessarily dead, but you need a specimen that you can actually say, hey, here it is, this is it, and this is what it is, and then point to it, and then you have a baseline specimen. Until then, it is unfortunately all speculation. I know people don't like to hear that, and you have people out there on Facebook and other places saying, I know everything, I have the secret knowledge, which is the first big red flag, and is somebody basically making up shit to freaking gain a following, which is what they're going to do. I'm going to switch to putting sunglasses on, because when the sun comes out, all the whiteness becomes very bright. Excuse me, I'll probably have to filter that out. And also gives you a sun related sneeze tendency too. But let's see. Nezra, we basically fell out over methodical differences. I thought we needed to evolve as changing times proved the need. They felt otherwise, so could have been handled more diplomatically, but in the end it basically came down to the band broke up over artistic differences, and that's about as mean as I'm going to get about that. People have moved to other states, people have lost interest, people have joined other groups, and Nezra is dead, unfortunately. May it rest in peace. The SRI, ironically, the one group that I probably over time online got along the worst with, and yet they're the ones who never screwed me over, if you can figure that out. If only ironically because when they were in your face and didn't see eye to eye with you, they just come out and say so. So, not the most diplomatic group of people all the time. However, they never lied to me. So run that through your head and process that as you will. The ABS, the first time, we fell out not because of disagreement with the leadership. Basically, the guy in charge had a kid and decided he was going to do family fatherly things and took the life happens route over being a Bigfooter for a bit, and then never returned to it. And then the group name was usurped by a person who, if they are still active in Bigfooting, I would openly tell you to avoid this person like the plague, because effectively they are. It's a female, and last name begins with Carson, with Covey Carson. I'll leave it at that. The person is somebody to be avoided. The minute you disagree with somebody like this, you'll find out why. AIBR, same individual accused a person who was a member of the group of hoaxing. More than likely, it was a matter of a poorly thought out practical joke in the expedition space. I, in principle, agreed with the assertion it could be taken as a hoax. I got banned from that group by a certain well-known Bigfooter for that. At the same time, that it was ignored that the other toxic individual had made the actual comment. They were never thrown out. That is a legitimate grievance, and ironically, when that happened, the very person accused of hoaxing defended my right to say what I said and thought that my being thrown out was BS. Wrap your mind around all that. What that proves is the AIBR is kind of the epitome of what's wrong with the greater Bigfoot community, which is it's a popularity contest. Another example would be Beachfoot. You are talking about an elitist gathering of people who pretend to discuss Bigfoot in some kind of a convention. It's all the popular cool kids on the West Coast, with some exceptions, but you have to know Todd Neese, who I'm not bad-mouthing, but at the end of the day, knowing people who have been there, it's not a matter of talking Bigfoot, it's a matter of getting loaded and getting drunk off your ass for the weekend, which, if that's your thing, knock yourself out, but you know, you're not there to do science-y things, you're there to get fucked up, and it's a convention. Don't kid yourself. But that's enough of that. I'm going to keep going down this way. I don't see any immediate tracks, so we're going to go as far as that fallen tree down there and see if the conditions allow for deeper penetration. If not, I'll go in a little ways off the trail just to get a workout, because you're going to get one, given the depth and wetness of the snow again. Not to beat the dead horse, but in the meantime, what I'm going to do is take another segment break and cover some ground, stop yapping, and this video will be more as I find things in the snow, because The tracks you're going to find are going to be larger animals, given the depth of the snow. It's thick enough that I don't think like a shrew is going to make definitive tracks. A squirrel might, and I did find some last week, so that's possible. And you might find bunny tracks out here. But you're going to start seeing more likely things from like fox and bobcat size on up to Bullwinkle. There is a neighborhood moose, so running into their tracks is a likelihood. It's rare that I don't. I have yet to see the moose this year, but it is here. Don't kid yourself. But we're going to move on, and we will cover some ground at this point and be back again in a bit. Okay, so we're back. I decided to break my rule and go in. At the moment, we're just that deep, so it's not that big a deal. But it varies every step, so you go slow and you kind of don't sink all the way up to your thigh quickly, because that's how you freaking twist your knee, and then walking out of here in this deep shit like that with a knee injury, that's going to suck. Those are old, but those are by the stride, probably moose tracks. So here's the thing about coming to an area over time, and an argument in support of that. The one weird thing about this snow is I can actually use it to stand and kind of like lean up against, because it is that solid. The thing about being in an area like this where you follow up and you notice patterns, as opposed to just randomly going to the same 2 places or the same 4 places in no particular order twice a year, which is what Nezra did, which may be nuts in the end. They're gone, so I can critique them now and they can deal with it. You notice the actual route that certain animals will take, notably the neighborhood moose, who is a bull. And he comes through this area, and you will, when you have trackable medium like this, see him follow the same basic route through here. So he has a route, which means moose, at least this one, is a creature of habit. So if you were actually hunting one, if it was legal in Connecticut, I don't believe that it is, but if it were, you'd be able to stalk him because you know where he comes from. Or if you're just tracking him and you just have a mild curiosity about moose and moose stuff, like myself, and apparently there's another gentleman in the general area who is known as a quote-unquote moose enthusiast. Say that 5 times fast. He would take interest in something like this. And I do think I've met him online on Facebook. I forget his name, but there's a guy out there, and he is like the moose guy. So, I mean, everyone has a hobby. That's his niche. So I'm going to keep going. I'm going to work my way that way. Look for any new tracks. Those are old. Those are like more than a week old, because they're just so... Yeah, obviously there's big dents where they got snowed over. I don't think... As I'm judging the average depth of my track in this, it's more likely they got about 6, maybe 8 inches up here as opposed to the 20 we got pummeled with. We had gotten to a point down there where it started to melt, and then we just got hammered with another 1.5 foot. So if I beat on the subject, I apologize, but we are ready for spring. This is it's gotten old. It gets in the way of doing what I like to do out here. So I like to go in deeper, but when you got to actually earn the beach every step, it cuts into the amount of time that you're going to have to get in and get out of here. So you just know your limitations and you work with them. Today's tracking, I will look. Apparently there's a lady that I know from online who says there might be activity going on. Where is that? Somewhere. I think it's in Central Mass somewhere, with an offer to check that out, and I will follow up on that when I get home in the interest of investigation and all that. Beyond that, I may not go to the thing in southeastern Connecticut, largely due to the consideration that you have to pay to go. And this guy, again, for the record, I have nothing against the guy throwing this. I've encountered him once. We've talked on the phone. He seems okay. I have no issues with him. I know of no issues with him from other people that I know in the community, but the area that he's talking about is an area I've been to before, and I can get there on my own. I don't really need to pay to go there. And again, being, as this may come across a bit arrogant, I don't see it that way. With the experience I have in the field doing what I've done for as long as I have, I just don't feel the need to pay to play. So I get that some people, that's what they do, and you know, I'm not against it per se, but I don't need to engage on that particular venue on that level, because I can get there on my own. I have my own equipment. I have my own means, and where this guy's from out of state, I'm not. So it's a local area I can get to like next week. Since he did share where it is, I can kind of get there. In fairness to him, however, he wanted it confidential, so I'm not going to share where it is per se, as any more than to say what he's already said, which is it's southeastern Connecticut, which is an interesting choice because previous to now, I'm not aware of any particular activity patterns down that way, but maybe he knows something I don't. Or maybe he threw a dart at the map, who knows. But I have been down that way before. And I've done time in the field on that side of the state as well. It is a fairly wooded part of the state. I don't like going there mainly though because the law enforcement in that part it's called the quiet corner, and that means that cops in that area tend to take on a more I think I've mentioned before, I'm not really fond of redneck cops and the fact they need to justify their existence. Think like Roscoe P. Coltrane. Cops in the northeast corner have denied for years that they have quotas, but they also have incentives. You can call it whatever the heck you want. It's a freaking ticket quota, and I don't like dealing with that, so I don't usually. Also, there's a lack of activity that I'm aware of in recent years from that part of the state, so if that were to change, I can rethink that, but at this point, once we have less snow on the ground, because unfortunately also this last storm, that part of the state is exactly what absolutely got pummeled. We got 20 inches, they got more. So I'm not going to blindly try to go into an area for the first time if it's this deep and you don't know the area. That's just a tall order. So I'm going to take a break, stop yapping, try to make my way down to the pond to have a look down there. And it's just easier to do that without yapping. So, and looking through the pass right here, that's looking deep. So right now it's about that deep. So you're knee deep again. And you also have a lot of deadfall on the ground, so you have to step over that. So you might run into that. Each step has to be kind of tentative. You have to pay attention. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to shut up, and we'll take a segment break, and we'll be back again in a bit. We're a little closer to the edge of the pond, and it strikes me that it's actually educational to cover some aspects of walking through wet, heavy shit like this. One is the walking technique that is going to probably least get you injured out here, and that is basically, it's a kind of a two-step walking process, as overly technical as this sounds. You take a step and you push, and then you take a step and kind of push to see how far that second part of your step is going to sink in. Right now you notice I'm only mid-thigh, but more than once that I've walked in here so far today, you take a step beyond that and you're back up to your knee. So you want to make each step a little bit more careful, because if you try to plow through this and again you do something to your knee, or I mean you can come in at a weird angle. You also have deadfall in here, so if you end up stepping on a log or something, you just kind of keeping things. Every step, I guess, is tentative and kind of a two-step step. The snow two-step, I guess. Anyway, the other thing is these hunter's pants have like little stirrup things that wrapped around my boot, because it's a lot more pleasant walking in this if you don't have your pants rolling up and have snow getting into your socks and your boots and getting your feet any wetter than they need to be. Because again, it's 45 degrees today, so it's not that cold, which means the snow is going to be wet. And that means that, I mean, nothing in my experience in the outdoors gets anything wetter. Honestly, there's like snow like this, and then there's like the slushy, it isn't quite snow, it's not quite water. That kind of stuff will get, you can have all the water repellent on your boots you want. It's still going to get in. That is one unique substance that will get you wet no matter what. And we do, where I live in my part of the state, it is kind of what I consider the slush belt. Although this year we've had a cold snap and a crap load of blizzard like snow, so it's not really been the case. I guess that's a positive in a ironic, backhanded kind of way. And the other thing in the educational aspect of moving through this, take your time, because you're not going to plow through this. And what you see me doing is you take a step, test the step before you commit your weight to it, because this and previous years, I had experience in Vermont where the snow this time of year is a lot deeper than this, and I wanted to take a step off to get a nice scenic view of a pond like this. And the minute I was off the packed down snowmobile trail, I was in snow up to my crotch, and my foot was reaching around in the bottom for the bottom, and the bottom wasn't there. So the snow at that point was so deep, it was like you couldn't even walk through it. You'd be more or less wading and or swimming through it to get back. I had to kind of do I was happy not to be witnessed by other parties kind of a role to get back to my feet on the snowmobile trail and realize at that moment what your limitations for your hike that day were going to be. This isn't quite that deep, but, and I have a gauge because I was here last week to know what the depth level, and down there is about where we are. It's doable. I just initially started out not really wanting to necessarily burn the calories, but I do like checking on the pond, because last year you actually had some interesting activity. You probably can't see them that well this year. There's 2 or 3 beaver mounds on the pond, and last year they looked like they had been overrun by otters, which previously I had not seen in the area. So I don't know if they were passing through or they live here too, because in the warmer months I haven't seen them in here. Kind of cool knowing we have otters in the state. They are here, they're just not as common. So, I mean, if you want a measurement, so you got a good inch and change, I mean a foot and change in snow that I'm walking through right now. But we'll get down to the water line and then assess as I fall down. I gotta actually take a segment break to stand back up, but I had mentioned that your foot can go in at an angle and you can slip too. So I'm unhurt, but I am need to have both hands to get up. So we'll be back in a bit when I get over this embarrassing moment. Only my pride. That just happened. As I'm talking about getting up from the deep little crevice of snow in Vermont, I step in at a weird angle and I wipe out of my ass. And I had a similar experience getting up now. It's not, when the snow's that deep, it's kind of a hard thing to do. I almost pulled my hamstring pushing against the depth of the snow. So before I move from this spot, I am going to actually check my pockets to make sure that I am not, in my struggles to stand up, leaving anything like my wallet or my Ruger, which would be a problem on a federal level, potentially. For those that are curious, yes, I do come out armed. Just, again, there's been a mountain lion in the area. I don't care about people as much as mountain lions. And the only thing I ever actually pulled bear mace on with the intent to potentially use was an overly unfriendly dog. I also have decided I'm going to probably call it here and just stand here after falling, because I just don't want to get twisted. I mean, like I said, I was pushing against the snow to get up, and I felt my hamstring not being happy, because it is under strain just walking through this crap. If I backtrack from here, I can actually gauge the depth and know what I'm getting into, as I've already been through it. So I'm going to take a segment break and do that. But before I do, as close as we're getting today, pretty view of the pond. That little lump, if you can make it out over there, is the first beaver pond, and that's the one that was overrun by otters last year. And way over there, if you can see it, there's probably a tree in the way, but way over there, if you can see that one sticking out a little more, there are 2 beaver mounds in here. Beaver lodge, that's the term. Ironically, I've never seen the beavers. I think I saw a muskrat. Maybe they took that over, because I know that muskrat and beavers are not adverse to sharing space together. Also, way over there, I don't have a zoom on this, but there's a trail of something walking literally over the beaver mound on the snow in here. But I am going to, yeah, I tweaked something I can already feel when getting up from the snow. So we're going to know our limits. Today is just one of those days that's like that. But we're going to turn around and start working our way in a different angle towards the more ankle deepy stuff again. And I thank the woods for the probably 1,000 calories I burned coming down here just because. And we're going to take a segment break while I turn around and not wipe out like I did the first time, because that's a pain in the ass getting up again. And again, I'd rather do it without a yanked hamstring, so yay. We'll be back and carry on from there. Okay, I didn't make the noise to record. Some more deep snow wisdom. There's no shame in backtracking, because you can look down there and kind of gauge the depth of the snow, which you can look for educational purposes. It ain't an inch deep. This is moderate because you are stepping knee deep, and then you come up here to a rise where it's mid-thigh, but then you take a step over here and it gets deep again. And having wiped out once, I have discovered the hard way that getting up is a pain in the ass, largely because despite the fact the snow is wet and heavy, it has more give than you want when you're trying to push off of something to get back to your feet. And you're on uneven terrain, and you don't have a lot of give. I wasn't really near enough to it free to grab onto one of those. That's your other thing that you have to push off with your legs, which is easier said than done when the medium you're working with is kind of slippery to a point, and you're just, nature doesn't really feel like playing nice with you today. So, unique wisdom today from the standpoint of someone. Okay, I didn't lose my magazine either. If it's unclear, gun magazine, not like Outdoorsly Monthly or whatever. There's a deep one. That's nice for you. How's that? Walking through here. It wasn't as deep as I thought, but it was deep enough to be a pain. Which is why I'm going to stick directly to the tracks and not second guess myself. Side comment on that note, kind of delving into gun stuff for a moment. When the government tried to say after shooting Alex Petty, that it's a weird thing to walk around with a legal firearm and 2 extra magazines, that's bullshit. That's actually fairly normal. Especially if you're going to the range or something like that, because you're not just going to go pay the admission fee to get in. Or I guess it's like a lane fee, because when I do that for archery, you're paying a flat rate per hour to basically shoot holes in their targets. But you're not just going to go with one 6 or 10 round of a magazine and walk out and just waste the money for doing that. You're going to go and get enough to get target practice in and all that. And that's why you're like, why do you have an extra magazine? Well, here's the other thing to think about. You run into the kitty, the mountain lion, and you get him in the 3rd shot and you didn't put him down cleanly. You may need to reload. And this is, I'm not a rabid right-winger politically, but I am somebody who is very pro-2A, and if you're not, that is your right. However, I counter that. I'm not going to pertain this solely to gun control advocates, but self-defense is a fundamental human right. The law has nothing to do with it. Somebody comes to your front door to kick it in, be them an agent of the government or a criminal, you have a right to defend your life and that of your family and your loved ones, if not the obligation. It's called self-preservation. And any person who has a problem with that mindset is somebody who is a deviance of pretty much the nature of any living thing on earth. or a pandering bureaucrat. I'm going to stop politics before I go too deep into this, but or a pandering bureaucrat, Chris Murphy, you motherfucker, who is saying what's popular because that's what gets him votes from his core constituency. End rant and editorial, segment break, because I'm going to cover some ground again, and I probably just want to wipe out myself a second time. Anyway, we'll be back. So, true to the nature of almost March, it's actually kind of warm today, and it's probably like 45 degrees right now, which, marching through this lovely stuff, you can see I got back to the normal stuff where it's my suspicion is if you were under this particular layer of snow, there's a previous path where people were walking last week that packed it down, making it not the bear that walking through that stuff was. My apologies for the political rant. I try very hard to keep politics out of this. Although I have no love for my governor. I mean, not for the governor, for the that particular senator. Largely due to his stance on the two-way and the fact that he's a one-trick pony with that. And some things he did during the last shutdown. I guess I am going to comment on that. So this is not a right-wing, this is not a left-wing stance. This is a common-sense stance. We pay Congress, the same very people who have free health care, think about this for a second, to coexist like adults, get along, and do their fucking job. You notice I'm going to use an F-bomb in here for emphasis. As much as some people don't like profanity, you know the thing I find in life is, you drop one of those, it does get their attention. You have a protected class of people that are so Praetorian that they have free health care, they have their own free subway system to get to and from work, and yet they're sitting there pretending and pandering to have some kind of a high horse they're on, and saying that they're fighting for your health care while at the same time you're about to have food stamps run out for the most needy people in the population. So from the standpoint of somebody in that situation, hypothetically, I'm not in that situation myself, but people may need health care next month, but if they are basically wondering how they're going to feed their kids tomorrow, where is your immediate concern going to be? You might want that person, right or left wing leaning, to get off their ass, do their job, and get a budget going. Because every other time it comes like this, some asshole who's been in office way the hell too long, and a lot of Connecticut senators have been in. The one from East Hartford, I'm going to leave him out of this to keep it from being political, but he's been in office as long as I have been an adult, and I'm well into my 50s. That should tell you something. I am, right-wing or left-wing, a very, very ardent supporter of the theory of term limits, and I throw that at the Supreme Court, too. The fact that you have these corrupt assholes, I guess I am going to be political for a minute, these corrupt assholes, right or left-wing, in there for life, is a fundamental flaw of the American system. There, I said it. And now I'm going to shut the fuck up because I am going too far into politics. It's too easy to do that and get all pissed off for the rest of the day, and it is a Saturday. Anyway, I'm going to wrap this one up. It's quiet because, quite honestly, nothing out here wants to walk through that shit. You notice a complete lack of tracks, except for a spare few. And a lot of them are paralleling my own and the person who came in here before me because, frankly, walking through this is easier than the shit I just showed you a short time ago. And again, you can actually fall down in that and getting up in it. It's not the easiest thing to do because getting up in this is not a big deal, but when it's up to your waist when you're down on your knees and there's nothing to push off against, it's a pain in the butt. Not fun. Anyway, that's enough rambling for one day out here in the woods. Like, subscribe, hit the little notification bell, and you can watch more of this kind of stuff if this is your cup of tea. And leave comments if you want. Thumbs up, thumbs down, critiques, criticism, death threats if you must. And we'll catch you on the next one. And in the meantime, thanks for spending some time on this oddly warm, deep snow day of weird conditions and limitations. And we'll catch you on the next one. Bye.